So badass Chuck Schumer, he is just Mr. Tough Guy, kicking ass, taking names. He looked at the Supreme Court and said, "I'm gonna kick all your guys' asses. You better watch yourself." That's not exactly what he said. So Chuck Schumer did say some comments where they're threatening to censor him, and this is just right on the heels of the impeachment. So this is just kind of retaliatory. It's very nitpicky, but I guess in a way the whole Ukraine thing was a little bit nitpicky. He's guilty of the thing, but it just seems like out of everything that it was the phone call, the Ukraine thing. That was the thing that tipped the scales, huh? So Chuck Schumer, he's at some kind of abortion rally. It's pro-choice, I think, because he's talking about how they're taking away women's rights. But it's protecting the women's patients' rights. I'm not for sure exactly about the court case that he was making these comments about. But he's in Washington, D.C. He's right outside the U.S. Supreme Court. It's Wednesday, March 4th, 2020. Now, the Supreme Court is about to take up the first major abortion case in the Trump era. So this has to do with this Louisiana law requiring doctors who perform abortions to have admitting privileges at local hospitals. I don't know. It's much more complicated. I'll take a look into it more. But we're focused on Chuck Schumer's comments at this rally, public rally outside. He's at a podium, lots of people, cameras, everybody's recording. And what does Chuck Schumer say? Chuck Schumer says that they're taking away fundamental rights. I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions. Oh, you've released the whirlwind and you will pay the price. So Chuck Schumer, he would have been knocked over by an ant's sneeze. A grasshopper's fart could have taken Chuck to the ground. He's no tough guy, so give me a fucking break. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, but I want to talk about the near decision because I want to compare and contrast these comments with the near decision. There's two very good laws when it comes to the First Amendment. And the reason why they're good laws is not so much that I totally agree with them. I have some problems with the near decision. But the Brandenburg decision, it's a two-pronged test, and then the near decision is a three-pronged test. And so they say, this is when speech goes beyond where it's supposed to go. And so I like that it's consistent and logical standards for what constitute violent, dangerous speech. So Chuck Schumer, is that violent, dangerous speech? Well, the Brandenburg decision says absolutely no, right? It needs imminent lawless action. And the two-pronged test of the Brandenburg v. Ohio 1969 Supreme Court decision is one, speech that's directed at inciting or producing imminent lawless action, and two, likely to incite or produce such action. And so if Schumer had just said, hey, listen here, supporters, I want you all to rise up and I want you to physically attack members of the Supreme Court, then he would be breaking the Brandenburg v. Ohio standard because that's directly at inciting. And then I guess you would actually know that that's the first prong. The second prong, you'd have to ask yourself, is it likely to incite or produce such action? Can Chuck Schumer just walk outside into the street onto a podium and say, hey, supporters, attack those Supreme Court justices right now, like a military general, or like, the captains of the Bloods and Crips, just giving the soldiers orders, just right now, go attack those Supreme Court justices. The first prong test he fails, but the second, is it likely to incite or produce such action? So even if Chuck Schumer literally had called for, imminent lawless action, then you have to ask yourself, would it have actually have happened? So the Supreme Court justices, we're assuming that they're in the building because it's in front of the Supreme, but they might not have been even in the building at all. So it's clear, to me that Chuck Schumer is not saying that he's going to, attack them or that he wants the supporters to attack them, but that he's using, sort of extreme rhetoric in order to bring his point home. He wants to bring his point home. So the Brandenburg two-pronged test, the Chuck Schumer flies, above and beyond. Now, the three-prong test of Neer versus Minnesota, let's talk about the details of it first, okay? So, 1931, Neer v. Minnesota. You have these publishers, J. Neer and Howard Guilford, who had accused local officials of being affiliated with Jewish gangs in their Saturday Press newspaper, and Minnesota officials sought a permanent injunction against Neer and Guilford and their Saturday Press newspaper to stop them from printing their accusations. Minnesota officials said that J. Neer was guilty of the public nuisance law because he was being a nuisance. J. Neer was also accused of printing anti-Semitic and racist comments too. Chief Charles Hughes wrote the majority opinion stating that the public nuisance law of Minnesota was prior restraint of a person's right to free speech and press and expression. Therefore, it's against the First Amendment, and it's not, it's unconstitutional. J. Neer was free to continue publishing his criticisms of the local government officials. Now, that's just a general overview. He could have, I'm not exactly for sure of the case. I'm not, is it, people always say, it's racist and anti-Semitic, but was he actually criticizing them accurately? Because that's why when they go after him for libel or slander, truth is a defense, and so if they try to go that route, so instead they try to shut him down by saying this public nuisance law of Minnesota, that he broke it, but they said that that law is bullshit. It goes against the free, First Amendment, so they knock the public nuisance law of Minnesota down, and then that allows J. Neer to continue to criticize the local government officials. So that's a correct decision, right? You would assume so, depending on how out of hand the racist, anti-Semitic comments are, because I could see it kind of going both ways. Maybe J. Neer was very near to the truth, and he was getting to the public officials, and they were like, oh, shit, we need to, shut this guy down. Or he was being just, obnoxiously racist and anti-Semitic, and he needed to be shut down. So, free speech. So there's a three-pronged test that comes out of this with the Neer v. Minnesota Supreme Court decision in 1931. And essentially, it's a no prior restraint, which means you cannot tell a person they cannot print, such and such information, except for these three things. One, if it reveals crucial military information. Two, contains obscenity. Or three, may directly incite acts of violence. So that's number three, may directly incite acts of violence. This is, goes through, Brandenburg is going to definitely look at the third prong of Neer v. Minnesota. So Chuck Schumer says, he's going to reap the whirlwind, which that's very vague in general. He's going to reap the whirlwind, he's going to pay the price, and he's not going to know what hit him. And so, that could be, I would assume that it's Chuck Schumer, right? This little kind of Papa Bush sort of whip of a man. Just a breeze, right? A nice, soft, easy breeze could have send Chuck Schumer tumbling down a hill. So my guess would be it'd be some sort of political outcome, some sort of political, either stop the ballot or they pack the courts. So they go and pack the courts, and they add 5 more justices, and they get a bunch of liberal Democrats on the court, and therefore swing the court back over to the on the side of God and righteousness and justice, and so Neer v. Minnesota, reveal crucial military information. It doesn't do that. Contains obscenity. It's not obscene. May directly incite acts of violence. Now, let's think about that for a second. No, it doesn't do that either. So, may directly incite acts of violence. He just said that you're not going to know what hit you, and you're going to reap the whirlwind, and you're going to pay the price. And so, I would assume, and since we're, it's a guessing game, it's ambiguous, so just by the words alone, I think that you could say that they're ambiguous, therefore it's not a clear, that person, it's not like he said that, John Roberts is going to get attacked on, this date and time over by, this statue and whatnot, so it wasn't a specific threat to a specific person. So he's saying, reap the whirlwind, you're going to pay the price, and you're not even going to know what hit you. If they packed the courts, he wouldn't know what hit him if they packed the courts. Now, Chuck Schumer is going to say something else. Chuck Schumer is going to say that what he actually meant to say, because he's going to apologize, he's actually going to walk the comments back at a speech on the Senate floor. He said, I should have not used the words I used yesterday. They didn't come out the way I intended to. My point was that there would be political consequences for President Trump and the Senate Republicans if the Supreme Court, with the newly confirmed justices, stripped away a woman's right to choose. So he's saying it wasn't even a threat to the Supreme Court. It was to the president and to the goddamn Senate Republicans. So it's to the legislature and the executive. He didn't even mean the judicial branch. He wasn't even going to blame the judicial branch for making their judicial decision. He's going to blame the executive and legislative branch for, I guess, picking the newly confirmed justices. And so there's going to be political consequences for the executive and legislature branch. That's what, so he rolled the comments back. He didn't exactly say sorry, but he said, I shouldn't have used the words that I used yesterday. They didn't come out the way I intended to. But I wanted political consequences for the executive and legislature, not even the judicial branch. So is that likely to incite violence? So if you could have said, you know, he directed his supporters to, you know, do physical violence, and it's possible that his order could have been taken serious by, you know, one of his supporters. Now that he said, that's not what I meant, don't do that, that's not what I asked for, I'm saying that reap the whirlwind of political consequences. There's going to be the price to pay is political consequences. You won't know what hit you because of the political consequences that are coming your way. And so, you know, that's political consequences. I'm not for sure what they can actually do. They could impeach Supreme Court justices. Usually it's an appointment for life. And he can, you know, I guess there's things he could do with the executive and legislature. So, yeah, this is just a bunch of ridiculousness. Chief Justice John Roberts, he issued a statement. Justices know that criticism comes with the territory, but threatening statements of this sort from the highest levels of government are not only inappropriate, but they're dangerous. All members of this court will continue to do their job without fear or favor from whatever quarter. So that's a pretty good, you know, strong statement saying, I'm not going to be, you know, this little threat of yours isn't going to perturb me. And so I think that it's probably done and over with, right? There's talk about censorship in the Senate or the House or what have you. But with both the Neer decision and the Brandenburg decision, there's no imminent lawless action. None of that's about to happen. He didn't direct anybody to incite any kind of physical violence at all. He just said that there's going to be political consequences. Neer v. Minnesota in 1931, right, this is where the newspaper men were sitting there saying the local officials were connected to the gangsters. And they said that you're allowed to publish these things because we need to know. The public has a right to know. So Neer v. Minnesota, the three-pronged, you know, Chuck Schumer did not reveal any crucial military information. Nothing he said was obscene. And was there any, you know, possibility that it could have directly incited acts of violence? No, no, no. Is it the two-pronged test, speech that's directed at inciting or producing imminent lawless action? No. Likely to incite or produce such action. If the first prong is no, the second prong is no, too, for Brandenburg. So both the Brandenburg v. Ohio 1969 and the Neer v. Minnesota 1931 2- and 3-prong test both prove, you know, Chuck Schumer not guilty. It's okay, everybody. Calm down. He's allowed to say what he did, and John Roberts is allowed to say what he did. And so I think Chuck Schumer knows that he got close to the line, but, you know, without actually going over the line. So everything that Chuck Schumer said was protected speech. And, you know, there's, now we got to look at this fucking abortion law because I've heard that it's actually against pro-choice or that it's, like, really convoluted and complicated. So, what is Chuck Schumer protesting? Which side is he actually on? Is he violent and dangerous? Does his speech raise to the level of violent, dangerous speech, which means he needs to be thrown in jail or needs to be fined? No, 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 no. Brandenburg v. Ohio, Neer v. Minnesota. Both of those cases say Chuck Schumer not guilty. Peace.